On September 29, 2018, Daniel AdAway, a 24-year-old, returned to his home on Hardage Farm Drive in Marietta, Georgia. To his horror, he discovered his father, Wayne AdAway, lying lifeless on the floor. Overwhelmed with panic, Daniel immediately dialed 911 to report the tragic incident. Wayne, known for his peaceful nature, had fallen victim to a brutal attack in broad daylight within their quiet neighborhood. The entire town was shaken by this shocking event, unable to comprehend the true nature of Wayne's fate. As the details of that fateful September day unfolded, Wayne's family found themselves consumed by darkness. They were left wondering who could have committed such a heinous act against a simple man like Wayne. Marietta, a city in Cobb County, Georgia, is renowned for its strong sense of community and exceptional educational opportunities. With abundant green spaces, convenient access to amenities, and a diverse range of shopping and dining options, Marietta is often considered one of the best places to reside. However, beneath its pleasant facade, Marietta harbors a darker side. The city experiences higher rates of violent crime compared to many other cities in the United States, necessitating constant vigilance among its residents. The unresolved case of Wayne AdAway's tragic fate in 2018 continues to haunt the people of Marietta. Wayne, born on November 7, 1958, in Box Springs, Talbot County, Georgia, was the son of Clara and George Walden AdAway. Throughout his life, he was affectionately known as Wayne. Growing up with his sisters Beverly, Nancy, and Sylvia, Wayne developed a strong bond with his siblings, becoming a loving brother. During the 1970s, Wayne attended Pacelli Vikings Catholic High School in Columbus, Georgia, where he actively participated in football. Wayne completed his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management from the Georgia Institute of Technology in 1981. Shortly after, he joined Millikin in LaGrange, Georgia. In 1982, Wayne tied the knot with Carolyn Wojtasiak, whom he had met the previous year. Wayne's career took him to Atlanta in 1988, where he secured a position at Frito-Lay. Later, he ventured into the field of construction with P.J. Rowe Construction in Marietta. Wayne and Carolyn's married life flourished, and they were blessed with a daughter named Morgan on June 5, 1989. During this period, Wayne harbored aspirations of starting his own company, which eventually led to the formation of Woolard Atman Construction Incorporation on March 25, 1992. Wayne, along with his friends Scott Maness and Loris Woolard, established this commercial general contracting partnership. Wayne served as the vice president, while Loris held the position of president and Scott became the vice president and secretary. As Wayne thrived in his new professional endeavor, he and Carolyn decided to expand their family further. On April 24, 1994, they welcomed their second child, a son named Daniel. Despite his demanding work schedule, Wayne always prioritized his children and fulfilled his responsibilities diligently. In 1995, Wayne received a Catholic baptism at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Marietta, Georgia. Although Wayne's business initially operated on Wiley Road in Marietta, it relocated to White Circle on March 29, 2000, due to its growth and expansion. Wayne's dedication and contributions played a significant role in the success of the company over the years. By 2018, with Daniel and Morgan having reached adulthood, Wayne found more leisure time to indulge in various hobbies. He developed a passion for cowboy shooting, carpentry, motorcycle riding, horseback riding, hiking, as well as water and snow skiing. Wayne, a man in his late 50s, was leading a peaceful life in 2018 with his family at his residence on 570 Hardage Farm Drive in Marietta. However, tragedy struck on Saturday, September 29, 2018, when Wayne's family was away and he was alone at home. Upon his son Daniel's return at around 4:30 p.m., he made a shocking discovery. His father, Wayne, lying motionless on the floor, covered in blood. Daniel, in a state of panic, sought help from his neighbors and then called his mother, Carolyn, who did not answer. Subsequently, Daniel dialed 911 and reported the distressing situation to the operator. Responding promptly, officers from the Marietta Police Department arrived at the scene at 4:31 p.m. Daniel guided them to the basement where Wayne's lifeless body was found. The victim, identified as 59-year-old Douglas Wayne AdAway, had sustained 2 gunshot wounds, one in the upper right shoulder and another in the head. Detectives, upon assessing the gruesome scene, wasted no time in initiating their investigation. The investigation began with the detectives questioning the neighbors and Wayne's family members in order to gather any information or potential witnesses related to the disturbing incident. Unfortunately, no one had witnessed anything suspicious near Wayne's residence. However, due to Daniel's prior notification to the neighbors about Wayne's death and the presence of numerous police vehicles, news of the tragic event quickly spread throughout the Hardage Farm Drive neighborhood. This caused concern among the residents, as police presence was uncommon in the area. Officer Chuck McPhillamy, assigned to the case, reassured the residents that Wayne's murder was an isolated incident and there was no need for alarm. Over the next 2 days, the detectives meticulously searched the crime scene and interviewed the neighborhood, hoping to uncover any clues or potential suspects. Wayne's family members were interviewed separately to determine if they had any suspicions or if Wayne had any conflicts with anyone. However, no names were mentioned during these questioning sessions. During the search of the AdAway home, the detectives made a significant discovery. The 6-hour model P250, a handgun, was missing from the family's collection of weapons. The neighbors informed the detectives that Wayne's brutal murder had deeply shaken the peaceful and affluent Hardage Farm community. They described Wayne as a longtime resident of Marietta, well known and respected by all. They believed that Wayne, a calm individual, had no enemies and was likely shot by an unknown intruder. The detectives then examined the surveillance systems of Wayne's neighbors, hoping to find any valuable clues, and urged them to report any information related to the case to the Marietta police investigators. Despite the progress made by the detectives, a crucial piece of information from Wayne's family would ultimately crack the case wide open. A few days following Wayne's murder, the killer himself admitted his guilt to Wayne's family. The confession was made by Daniel, who revealed to his mother, Carolyn, that he and Wayne had been experiencing a strained relationship and had been frequently arguing. The breaking point for Daniel came when Wayne issued him an ultimatum, intensifying the tension between them. Daniel, who had a passion for painting and often shared his artwork on social media, had recently taken an interest in welding and wanted to improve his skills in that area. However, Wayne's demand that Daniel either find a job or leave the house infuriated him, leading to a moment of uncontrollable rage. On the afternoon of September 29, 2018, when Carolyn and Morgan were not at home, Daniel retrieved a handgun from the family's collection and shot his father in the shoulder and then between the eyes, causing Wayne's untimely demise. After committing this heinous act, Daniel meticulously crafted a false narrative. He contacted emergency services and fabricated a story, portraying himself as innocent. He maintained this deceit when speaking to the officers at the crime scene, insinuating that an unknown intruder was responsible for the murder. Carolyn and Morgan were left in a state of utter shock and despair upon hearing Daniel's confession, which transformed their already sorrowful lives into a grim reality. Daniel expressed remorse and shame for his actions, and ultimately decided to surrender himself to the authorities. While Daniel's confession provided substantial evidence linking him to his father's murder, the detectives also uncovered compelling proof. They discovered that Wayne had been shot with a 9mm handgun, and a weapon matching this description was found in the woods near a creek bed, approximately 100 yards away from the family's residence. The Sig Sauer model P250 was identified as the murder weapon, which happened to be missing from the AdAway family's gun collection during the initial search of their home. Wayne had purchased the gun himself, but Daniel's name was also on the receipt. To further investigate, the detectives conducted a gunshot residue test on Daniel, which came back positive, confirming the presence of residue on his clothes. By October 1st, 2018, the investigators had gathered enough evidence to link Daniel to Wayne's murder. Consequently, on October 2nd, 2018, Daniel Walden AdAway, the son of the deceased Wayne AdAway, was charged and arrested at 290 Lemon Street in Marietta, Georgia. He faced charges of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault with intent to commit murder, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Daniel was held without bond at the Cobb County Adult Detention Center, awaiting his trial. Wayne's death deeply affected Carolyn, leaving her devastated. Just a few weeks prior, on September 18, 2018, she and Wayne had celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary. The realization that her own son had shattered their once happy family was unimaginable. With a heavy heart, Carolyn and Morgan organized a prayer service at Mays Ward Dobbins Funeral Home on October 5, 2018, where Wayne's friends and family gathered to remember and honor him. On October 6, 2018, at 12 noon, a funeral service was held for Wayne at St. Joseph Catholic Church in Marietta. He was laid to rest at Kennesaw Memorial Park in Marietta, Cobb County, Georgia. Daniel AdAway pleaded not guilty and sought the legal representation of Marietta criminal defense attorney Mazi Mazloum. Although Mazi hadn't spent much time with Daniel yet, he believed that Daniel appeared to be a decent young man. When inquired about the case, Mazi mentioned that it was premature to provide any specific comments on the case details. However, he noted that not guilty pleas were common in cases of this nature. On October 9, 2018, Mazi Mazloum, acting as Daniel's attorney, disclosed that an initial hearing for Daniel Walden AdAway was set for November 29, 2018. Mazi emphasized that his primary objective during the hearing would be to secure additional evidence beyond what was outlined in the arrest warrant. Several hearings were conducted for Daniel's case in the subsequent days, but due to Daniel's uncooperative conduct, a verdict remained elusive. Throughout his time in custody and the subsequent hearings, Daniel's behavior took a concerning turn. As the trial scheduled for 2021 approached, Daniel was declared mentally incompetent. In the same year, Daniel was transferred from Cobb County Jail to Decatur Hospital for a psychological assessment. Although the results of the latest evaluation were presented to the court on April 12, 2021, the reports were sealed and the specifics were not disclosed to the public. Subsequently, Daniel was deemed competent to stand trial by state psychologists. According to the state doctors, they did not believe that Daniel's criminal responsibility was in question, asserting that he was legally sane and capable of proceeding with the trial. Mazi, Daniel's attorney, mentioned that he would have an independent expert review the state's conclusions. He highlighted that since competency was a dynamic concept, Daniel could proceed with the trial as long as he adhered to his medication regimen and did not experience adverse reactions. Another year passed without a verdict, and by 2022, Daniel had spent 3.5 years in custody at the Cobb County Adult Detention Center. On March 16, 2022, Daniel Walden AdAway pleaded guilty but mentally ill to one count of malice murder in the killing of his father, Douglas Wayne AdAway, in September 2018. Daniel, who was 27 years old at the time, received a 50-year sentence, with 25 years to be served in prison and the remaining 25 years on probation. This was part of his plea agreement, which also required him to undergo mental health supervision throughout his entire time in custody and probation. The announcement of Daniel's sentencing was made public on Friday, March 18, 2022, by Cobb County District Attorney Flynn Brody Jr. through a news release. Despite this significant development, Wayne's family, consisting of Carolyn and Morgan, chose not to comment on the verdict. They were already in the process of healing and did not want to revisit anything that would reopen old wounds. Their focus was on moving forward and building a better future, as the incident had deeply affected their lives. Wayne's case was undeniably tragic, as Daniel's irrational actions had completely altered the trajectory of their family's life. Carolyn, now accepting the reality, strives each day to make it better than the last. On her social media platforms, she shares her most cherished memories of Wayne with her loved ones.
In the suburbs of Belhaven, Greenwich, on the pleasant evening of October 30th, 1975, summer was in full swing. Martha was determined to convince her mother to allow her to partake in Mischief Night, the pre-Halloween tradition where harmless pranks were played around the neighborhood. After persistent persuasion, Dorothy, Martha's mother, finally relented and granted her permission. However, as the hours passed, Dorothy grew increasingly worried when she couldn't locate her daughter. She reached out to some friends, only to discover that no one had seen Martha. The search for her began, but it didn't take long to find her. Tragically, Martha was discovered lifeless under a pine tree, just 200 feet from her home, brutally murdered with a golf club. The events of that fateful night on October 30th left everyone questioning what had transpired and who could commit such a heinous act against an innocent young girl. The affluent community of Belhaven held many secrets behind its prestigious walls. Greenwich, one of Connecticut's oldest towns, boasted a rich history and culture. Situated just a 50-minute train ride away from New York City, this coastal town offered a delightful blend of New England charm and vibrant city life. The members of the Belhaven community were renowned for their wealth and influence, making it all the more shocking that such a privileged society could harbor dark secrets. Martha Elizabeth Moxley, a social butterfly, was known for her outgoing and fun-loving nature. Born on August 16, 1960, to Dorothy and John David Moxley, Martha was the youngest member of the family, alongside her older brother John. In 1974, Martha's father was transferred from his job in Piedmont, California, prompting the family to uproot and settle in a spacious mansion in Connecticut, thousands of miles away from their previous home in the affluent suburbs of Belhaven. While this transition may have been significant, Martha quickly adapted to her new surroundings. In no time at all, she formed numerous friendships at school, as her classmates were drawn to her vibrant personality and self-assurance. In just a span of 9 months, Martha managed to become the most popular girl at Western Junior High School. Her popularity extended to the boys as well, making her quite famous. Martha was a remarkable individual who seemed to have it all. She was known for her friendly nature, athletic abilities, and artistic talents. Everything seemed to come effortlessly to her. Her brother John described her as someone who was easy to get along with, positive, and someone you would enjoy being around. Despite her immense popularity, Martha remained grounded and family-oriented. She would often spend her time at home, either sketching or playing with her beloved cat, Tiger. However, like any other teenager, Martha also had a wild side. During the summer of 1975, she would spend most of her days at the Belhaven Club, engaging in activities like tennis and swimming. She would socialize with children from exclusive clubs, who were considered to be of a different class. Unlike her other friends, these children attended private academies and boarding schools and enjoyed a level of wealth that even surpassed Greenwich standards. Among these children, the Skakel family stood out, as they were cousins to the infamous Kennedys. Martha had a close connection with the Skakel boys, Thomas and Michael. The Skakels were neighbors to the Moxley family, and Thomas and Michael were nephews of Ethel Skakel and Robert F. Kennedy. The families were related, with Robert being the brother of the late President John F. Kennedy. Ethel Skakel's brother, Rushton, and his wife, Anne, had 7 children, including Thomas and Michael, who were 17 and 15 years old respectively at the time of Martha's murder in 1975. However, the Skakel family was far from harmonious. Michael Skakel later attributed chronic illness, alcoholism, and a repressive Catholic upbringing as ongoing sources of turmoil within the household. In 1973, Anne Skakel passed away due to brain cancer, leaving her husband Rushton Skakel, who struggled with alcoholism, to spiral further into a state of despair. With insufficient supervision and unlimited funds, Rushton would frequently leave their children home alone. As a result of his mother's death, Michael Skakel expressed that their household descended into an even more chaotic state. Interestingly, The Moxleys lived just about 150 yards away from the Skakels. Due to the lack of parental supervision, the Skakel household became a popular gathering spot for teenagers. Meanwhile, Martha was enjoying her summer days within the secure confines of the gated community in Belhaven. Her teenage years were filled with occasional rebellious acts such as sneaking out, smoking, and indulging in a few beers. In her diary, Martha documented several incidents that occurred during these holidays, many of which revolved around the Skakel brothers. Martha was particularly concerned about the advances she received from Thomas. On September 12, 1975, she wrote, "Dear Diary, me, Jackie, Michael, Thomas, Hope, Maureen, and Andrea were driving in Tom's car. I was practically sitting on Thomas's lap because I was only steering. He kept placing his hands on my knee. Then I took over driving again, and Tom put his arm around me. He continued to engage in such behavior. Additionally, on September 19, 1975, Martha made a note about Michael, stating, Michael was so completely out of it that he acted like a real jerk with his words and actions. He kept insisting that I was leading Tom on, even though I only see him as a friend. I told him, well, what about you and Jackie? You keep saying you don't like her, yet you're all over her. He fails to understand that he can be kind to her without being overly affectionate. It was evident that Martha had conflicting emotions about the Skakel brothers and often questioned whether she should continue spending time at their place. The uncertainty regarding her own safety and comfort weighed heavily on her mind. However, no one could have anticipated the events that would unfold next. On the 30th of October in 1975, the mischief hour commenced. Martha made every effort to persuade her mother to allow her to go out with her friends. Martha's father, John, was away on a business trip, leaving her with the opportunity to employ various tactics to gain her mother's approval. After persistent pleading, Dorothy finally succumbed to her daughter's request and granted her permission to go out for the night. Belhaven, the community they resided in, was known for its high level of security. Every individual entering or leaving the area was thoroughly inspected, making it highly improbable for any crimes to occur within such a safe locality. Martha ventured out with her friends Jackie, Jeffrey, and Helen, heading towards the Skakels' residence where they were scheduled to meet with their Kennedy cousins. As the night progressed, midnight approached. Dorothy was accustomed to her daughter occasionally missing her curfew, so her concern did not arise until 2:00 a.m. Initially, she assumed that Martha might have stayed over at her friend's house. In an attempt to locate her, Dorothy contacted Martha's best friend, Sheila, only to discover that she had not seen Martha since 9:30 p.m., around the same time when all the children had returned home. By 3:30 a.m., Dorothy was consumed with worry and decided to reach out to their neighbor, Thomas Skakel, who provided the same response as Sheila. At 3:35 a.m., Dorothy reluctantly gave up and contacted the police for assistance. The local Greenwich officers promptly arrived at the Moxley residence. After conducting a thorough search of the neighborhood alongside Dorothy, they found no signs of anything amiss. The officers reassured Dorothy and advised her to wait until morning. However, before departing, they disseminated Martha's information to nearby stations, urging them to remain vigilant for any sightings of her. Exhausted, Dorothy eventually fell asleep by the window, anxiously awaiting her daughter's return. The following morning, on October 31st, 1975, Dorothy hurriedly entered Martha's room, only to discover that her bed was empty. The authorities were once again summoned, and an unsettling sense of unease began to envelop her. She had a gut feeling that something was amiss. Dorothy refused to simply wait idly, so she made the decision to venture around the neighborhood accompanied by her son, John. The first place they decided to search was the Skakel residence. Despite living next door for 15 months, Dorothy had never set foot inside her neighbor's home. As she approached, their aggressive dog greeted her, leaving her quite shaken. Gathering her courage, she knocked on the door, and Michael, the younger Skakel brother, promptly answered. Dorothy inquired about Martha's whereabouts, but Michael informed her that Martha was not present and appeared to be in poor health. In fact, Dorothy suspected he might be hungover. Undeterred, Dorothy was determined to find some clue. She requested permission to inspect the camper parked outside, as she speculated that Martha might have fallen asleep there. However, her hopes were dashed when she discovered the camper to be empty. By this time, news of Martha's disappearance had spread throughout the community, prompting friends, neighbors, and the police to gather at Belhaven to search the premises. Shortly after noon, Martha's friend Sheila arrived at the Moxley household, trembling with fear, struggling to find the words to describe what she had just witnessed. Through tear-filled eyes, Sheila implored Martha's mother to call 911 for assistance. She revealed that something terrible had occurred, and Martha was unresponsive. Someone had attacked her, and immediate help was needed. Dorothy's companion Jean urged her to remain where she was while he investigated the situation. Upon reaching the scene, Jean made a horrifying discovery. Lying face down beneath the towering pine tree at the edge of the Moxley property, 200 feet away from her house, was the missing teenager. The back of her head had been brutally bludgeoned, and a broken golf club protruded from the back of her neck. Martha's attire was stained with blood, and her jeans and undergarments were pulled down to her ankles. Adjacent to the young girl lay a shattered 6-iron golf club, which had been repeatedly used to strike her head. The force of the blows was so intense that the club broke into 3 separate pieces, scattered across the ground near her lifeless body, except for the grip of the handle. The law enforcement officials were taken aback by the gruesome discovery. In the past 3 decades, Greenwich had not encountered a violent crime of this magnitude, let alone something as atrocious as this. The local police were ill-equipped to handle the severity of the situation at hand. Consequently, a team from the Connecticut County Station was assigned to conduct a thorough investigation. The forensic experts diligently collected as much evidence as possible from the crime scene, while Martha's body was sent for autopsy. The examination revealed no signs of sexual assault, with the primary cause of death being attributed to the blunt force trauma to her head. It was later revealed that Martha Moxley had remained a virgin until her untimely demise. As the investigation progressed, the local police officers in Greenwich began compiling alibis from all known witnesses in order to establish an accurate timeline of events surrounding the homicide. The Skakel brothers were the first individuals on their list. Both boys were interrogated on the same day, during which they provided their respective alibis for the time of the murder. When questioned, Thomas Skakel informed the detectives that he had last seen Martha around 9:30 p.m. outside his residence. He claimed to have immediately gone inside after bidding her farewell, where he joined the family's new live-in tutor, Kenneth Littleton, to watch the movie The French Connection. Thomas later returned to his room to work on a school report about Abraham Lincoln, although his teachers denied assigning such a task. Eventually, Thomas underwent 2 polygraph tests. The first test yielded inconclusive results, but he successfully passed the second one. Michael Skakel informed detectives that he left his residence at approximately 9:15 p.m. and drove to his cousin Jimmy's house, returning around 11:00 p.m. The police harbored some doubts regarding Michael's account, but lacked concrete evidence to label him as a suspect in the case. 24-year-old Kenneth Littleton was also under investigation in the autumn of 1976. He informed the authorities that he heard noises outside the house between 9:30 and 10:00 p.m. Littleton mentioned that before going outside, he checked on all 7 Skakel children, noting that Michael, his older brother Thomas, and 2 other Skakel boys were not present at home during that time. Detective Solomon's reports indicated that Littleton heard rustling leaves and noises from the bushes on the property, although he did not witness anything at that moment. Littleton stated that he only saw Thomas at 10:25 p.m., when he joined him in front of the TV. The other Skakel boys returned home within half an hour. Littleton claimed to be unaware of Martha Moxley's identity, as it was his first night at the Skakels' residence. Despite failing multiple lie detector tests, Littleton was never formally charged in connection to the case. During the ongoing investigation, the police discovered 2 significant pieces of evidence. Martha Moxley had been beaten and stabbed with a Tony P. golf club engraved with the initials of a Skakel family member. Upon inspection, the same set of golf clubs was found at the Skakel household, with 1 club missing. Rushton Skakel, their father, who had returned from a hunting trip upon learning of Martha's murder, initially cooperated with the authorities but later ceased communication with them. On January 22, 1976, the Skakel family, following their attorney's advice, declined to respond to further inquiries and terminated their cooperation with the investigators. Martha's friends provided alibis that raised numerous questions. On the night of October 30, 1975, Martha Moxley joined her friends for Mischief Night, a neighborhood tradition involving pranks like ringing bells and toilet papering houses. According to her friends, Martha was seen flirting with Thomas, the oldest Skakel brother, and moments later, they found her kissing him. One of her friends mentioned seeing Martha and Thomas near the pool in Skakel's backyard, behind the fence around 9:30 p.m. Over the next few months, the detective conducted more than 200 scheduled interviews. All interviewees underwent multiple polygraph exams as part of the investigation process. Donald Brown, the state's attorney for Fairfield County at the time of Martha's murder, stated that while individuals are not obligated to cooperate with the police, it is unusual for someone possessing information about a violent crime to withhold it from investigators. Initially, the case went cold for nearly 2 decades due to a lack of information. However, in 1991, a rumor linking another Kennedy family member, William Smith Kennedy, to the murder led to the reopening of Martha Moxley's case. Although William's connection to the case was eventually dismissed, this development sparked new leads and reignited the investigation. In the same year, renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Henry Lee was brought in by the police. Dr. Lee utilized advanced technology that was not available in 1975. Dr. Lee examined various items, including clothes found in the Skakel garbage shortly after the murder. He discovered hairs in the fibers, some of which were microscopically similar to the victim's hair, while others were merely similar. Dr. Lee concluded that the hair belonged to a Caucasian male. However, the investigators faced a challenge as they did not possess any hair samples from the potential suspects, making it impossible to establish a match. Nevertheless, Dr. Lee managed to provide a potential motive for Martha's murder by studying the crime scene photographs. He noted that the blood smear on her body indicated an attempt to use force, suggesting a sexually motivated homicide. This revelation led to Michael quickly becoming the primary suspect in the case. Rushton Skakel, in an attempt to clear his family's name, allegedly hired a private investigator. He hoped that this would shift suspicion onto other suspects, particularly former suspect Kenneth Littleton. Unfortunately for him, this plan backfired. Private investigators Jim Murphy, a former FBI agent, and his assistant Willis Billy Krebs, a former NYPD lieutenant, became involved in the Martha Moxley case. During their interviews with Tom and Michael Skakel regarding their activities on the night of the murder, it was revealed that both boys had lied to the police. Thomas Skakel admitted that he had last seen Martha outside his house closer to 10:00 p.m., not 9:30 p.m. Additionally, Thomas and Martha engaged in inappropriate activity outside his home before he went back inside. According to Krebs, Thomas became emotional and started crying while confessing this, but his lawyer interrupted before he could say more. Meanwhile, Michael Skakel informed the investigator that he did not go to bed upon returning home from his cousin's house around 11:00 p.m. Instead, he had climbed a tree outside Martha Moxley's bedroom window and engaged in inappropriate activity. Author and journalist Dominic Dunn obtained the investigator's report and passed it on to State Inspector Frank Garr, who had previously worked as a detective on the case. Despite sharing his suspicions about Michael Skakel earlier, lack of information led to dismissal. This report provided new momentum to this theory. Leonard Levitt, an investigative reporter, covered the Moxley case in 1982 and also had a similar theory about Michael. He pointed out the absence of defense wounds, suggesting that the victim knew her attacker. Levitt believed that the repeated blows with a golf club indicated a crime of passion, implying a personal connection between the two. Levitt waited 20 years to report on Martha Moxley. The report revealed that both Thomas and Michael Skakel had made shocking admissions to the detectives. They confessed to lying to the police about their whereabouts on the night of the murder. Thomas claimed to have spent time with Martha after 9:30, engaging in a sexual act before leaving her around 10:00. Levitt emphasized the inconsistencies in Thomas' story. In 1998, a one-man grand jury and an investigator were tasked with reviewing Martha Moxley's case. After examining the evidence, Judge George N. Thim concluded that there were sufficient grounds to charge Michael Skakel with her murder. Michael faced trial for Martha's murder in his late 30s, finally receiving justice after nearly 2 decades. He was convicted based on circumstantial evidence presented during the 3-week trial. Investigators have found a piece of the golf club, a 6-iron from a set that had belonged to Michael's mother. However, prosecutors lacked direct physical evidence linking Michael to the murder case. He insisted he was far away from the crime scene at his cousin's house, watching Monty Python's Flying Circus. Nevertheless, jurors later stated they were swayed by his incriminating statements and erratic behavior. Several former classmates of Skakel testified during the trial. While at Eland School, a facility for troubled youths, Michael reportedly confessed to them about Martha's murder. One former schoolmate, Gregory Coleman, testified in a pre-trial hearing in June 2000 that Skakel had told him, "I'm going to get away with murder. I am a Kennedy." Coleman also mentioned that Michael had claimed he tried to make advances towards a girl who did not reciprocate, leading him to commit the crime. However, Coleman passed away in August 2001 due to a heroin overdose and did not testify during Michael's murder trial in 2002. Michael had a troubled past, with rumors circulating about his time at Eland School. Despite the school owner's denial of any confession, numerous witnesses supported the claim. 2 former classmates from Eland School, including John D. Higgins, came forward as witnesses during the trial. Higgins described Michael's confession as tearful, dazed, and fragmented, with Michael only recalling bits and pieces of the crime. Gregory Coleman, the other witness, stated that Michael confidently declared he would escape punishment for Martha's murder due to his family name. Following Michael Skakel's imprisonment in August 2002, his cousin, Robert Kennedy Jr., became a staunch advocate for him. Kennedy firmly believed that his cousin was innocent and being falsely implicated for political reasons. In his interview with CBS 48 Hours, Kennedy expressed his certainty, saying, "I know Michael Skakel, and I know he didn't commit this crime." In 1997, Michael Skakel collaborated with ghostwriter Richard Hoffman to write his autobiography, titled Dead Man Talking: A Kennedy Cousin Comes Clean. During the trial, a particular recording played proved to be highly incriminating. Michael admitted that on the night of Martha's murder, he was intoxicated, had consumed marijuana, and experienced inappropriate urges. When Dorothy Moxley arrived at his door the next morning, Skakel panicked. He confessed on the recording, "I was still under the influence from the previous night, a bit intoxicated, and worried if he had been seen." Michael claimed he was concerned about being caught by anyone from the Moxley household. Prosecutors argued that Michael's reference to engaging in inappropriate acts was actually him admitting to beating Martha with a golf club. Michael's defense countered by highlighting the lack of physical evidence against him and presenting an alibi for the time of Martha's murder. Nevertheless, the prosecution portrayed Michael as a jealous teenager during the trial. They argued that his rejection by Martha, combined with his drug and alcohol use and access to the murder weapon, led him to act on his violent thoughts. On June 7, 2002, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, resulting in Skakel's sentencing to 20 years to life in prison. The jury and state superior court revealed their decision just after 10:30 a.m., following the commencement of its 4th day of deliberations. Rushton Skakel seemed almost shocked as the foreman declared the verdict in the crowded, silent courtroom. The public celebrated the justice served. This case was one of the most intricate and sorrowful in the Northeast, enveloped in a whirlwind of affluence and fame. The 27 years of torment finally came to an end for the Moxley family. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Moxley confronted a large crowd of reporters and television crews. Through tears, she mentioned that she had prayed before entering the court. "My prayer began with, 'Dear Lord, once again today, just like I have been doing for 27 years. I prayed that I could attain justice for Martha,' she expressed. This entire ordeal was about Martha," she continued. "Today belongs to Martha. This is truly Martha's day." While Michael was incarcerated, his legal team and supporters fought for the annulment of his conviction. 4 appeals were submitted, all of which were rejected. Then, on October 23, 2013, Michael was granted a new trial due to the inadequate representation provided by his defense attorney, Mickey Sherman. Consequently, Skakel was released on $1.2 million bail on November 21, 2013. Prosecutors strived to reinstate Skakel's conviction. They eventually succeeded in December 2016 when the Connecticut Supreme Court ruled with a 4-3 decision, affirming the validity of his representation. However, the case did not conclude there. In May 2018, the court overturned its ruling with another 4-3 decision, determining that Michael's attorney, Mickey Sherman, failed to present evidence of Michael's alibi during the initial trial. Prosecutors still retain the option to retry Michael, although they will likely encounter challenges due to deceased witnesses and other issues. Michael's legal team, in a released statement, commended the court's decision, stating that it was the right course of action. The lawyers have also stated that Michael, who maintains his innocence, has been wrongly incarcerated. However, the Moxleys remain steadfast in their belief of Michael's guilt. "I have no doubt in my mind that he is responsible," Dorothy asserted. John Moxley, her 59-year-old son, expressed that the jury's decision in the 2002 trial, reached after considering the evidence against Michael Skakel, continues to provide him with reassurance. "We have a sense of comfort knowing what transpired," he stated. Currently 55 years old, Michael Skakel resides with his aunt in Westchester County, New York. He spends his days caring for his 15-year-old son, George, and striving to move forward from the trauma of this past conviction and imprisonment. He is legally obligated to seek permission from the court to travel outside of Connecticut or New York. "I wish to leave this nightmare behind so that I can start building a life with George, without this constant burden," he expressed in an email. "I lost 11 and a half years of my life. I missed out on George's entire childhood. I know I can never reclaim those years, but I consider myself fortunate to be able to spend time with George now." The death of Martha Moxley haunted the Greenwich community, her family, and friends for over 40 agonizing years. While many still believe that the verdict against Michael was fabricated, ultimately, a mother lost her daughter, and the state of Connecticut failed to deliver proper justice for Martha's death. Numerous individuals believe that Michael evaded punishment due to his connections and wealth. Martha's father, John David Moxley, fought for his daughter's justice until his death in 1988. Even to this day, the Kennedy family continues to be associated with the Martha Moxley case. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who authored the book Framed, Why Michael Skakel Spent Over a Decade in Prison for a Murder He Didn't Commit in 2016, left Dorothy Moxley, Martha's 84-year-old mother, speechless with his publication. She mentioned that truth had never appeared so distorted and manipulated in her entire life. Despite this, she remained convinced that Michael was responsible for her child's death. Kennedy's book dedicated a whole chapter to tarnishing John's character, Martha's father. He cast doubt on his whereabouts on the night of the murder and made several accusations against the Moxley family. As of December 2019, Michael Skakel is still a free man. The memory of Martha Moxley is forever engraved in the hearts of Greenwich residents. A young, beautiful girl was robbed of her innocence before she could fully blossom into adulthood. This is not the first tragedy that has been swept under the rug by the Kennedy family. The legal battle between Michael and the Moxley family was a nationwide conflict, and while there are still many unanswered questions surrounding this case, we offer our sincerest condolences to the family of the victim.
In May of 1974, the Connecticut State Police were alerted to 2 murders that took place at a residence on Shoeville Road in Ledyard, Connecticut. After conducting a search of the property and its surroundings, investigators discovered the decomposed remains of a man and a woman buried in shallow graves located a few hundred feet behind the house. The man was later identified as Gustavus Lee Carmichael, a convicted serial bank robber who had previously escaped from custody. Carmichael had a history of committing bank robberies across the country and was apprehended in 1970 for stealing $60,000 from a bank in New Jersey. Over the course of his life, he had been convicted of various crimes including burglary, kidnapping, attempted burglary, grand larceny, assault and battery, and armed robbery. Following his escape from a Massachusetts jail while being transferred to federal court in Hartford, Connecticut in October 1970, Carmichael went on the run and met the woman who would later be known as Lorraine Stahl. They assumed the identities of Dirk and Lorraine Stahl and sought refuge at the residence of Richard DeFreitas and Donald Brandt, who were also involved in criminal activities. DeFreitas and Brandt had safe houses where fugitives could hide from law enforcement. However, when Lorraine Stahl expressed her concerns about their lifestyle to DeFreitas' wife, DeFreitas and Brandt decided to eliminate Carmichael and the woman to prevent any potential exposure of their illegal operations. Fearing Carmichael's intervention if they targeted only the woman, they chose to kill both of them. Investigators believed that Carmichael and the woman were murdered on December 31st, 1970, 4 years prior to the discovery of their bodies. DeFreitas and Brandt shot and killed Carmichael and the woman before disposing of their bodies, which remained undiscovered for over 3 years. Richard DeFreitas and Donald Brandt were eventually convicted of the murders and have since passed away. While the man was identified, the woman remained unknown as she had used an alias that was never confirmed. Prior to adopting the name Lorraine Stahl, she went by the names Connie and Sandy and was often seen driving a 1964 green Oldsmobile with either Massachusetts or Maine plates. The vehicle was later discovered abandoned in Hartford with a Maine registration sticker on the license plate. It was believed that she may have worked in New York City. Following the discovery of the bodies, authorities found clothing and jewelry with the woman's remains, including a tan leather wet look vest, a gold or tan sweater, a brown tweed skirt, and a pair of brown granny boots. She was also wearing a pendant and rings, as per state police reports. A class ring found had the letters JHSN monogrammed, the initials ILN, and the date 1917 engraved inside. Despite being unidentified for 5 decades, her case details were entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System in 2011 and the Combined DNA Index System in 2012, yet she remained nameless. However, in 2022, DNA samples were sent to Othram Labs, who successfully created a DNA profile of the victim. By January 2024, the results led to a connection with the victim's sister. It was also discovered that the victim had a daughter who provided a DNA sample, ultimately leading to the identification of Lorraine Stahl as Linda Sue Childers. Childers, born on September 4, 1946, originally hailed from Louisville, Kentucky. Her sister and daughter were informed of her identification, marking the resolution of a case that had remained unsolved for over half a century.